I started making sourdough bread in October or November of 2023. It is now springtime of 2025. It's been a little over a year. I have learned so many lessons along the way, and I just wanted to take a moment to share 5 critical things that I really wish I knew when I first started making sourdough. It would have saved me a lot of heartache, a lot of frustration. I am glad that I slowly learned these things for myself along the way, but if I had just had someone like ingrain this stuff into me, I feel like the whole process would have been a little bit more joyful. So as I put together a loaf of bread, just so I'm not standing here talking to you, that might be boring, I'm gonna put a loaf of bread together and share those 5 lessons with you. Disclaimer, this isn't like gonna be the best loaf of bread ever because all I have right now is discard. I didn't time out the filming of this video very well, and I wasn't planning on making a loaf, so the starter I fed this morning is still rising. So I'm just gonna use discard. It's fine. Sometimes you make decisions and you know the bread may not turn out as good as it could, but that's okay. And today that's okay. 325 grams of water. So lesson number 1, something I wish I really took to heart at the very beginning, is do not attach your self-worth to your sourdough crumb. It does not matter what the inside of your bread looks like. If you enjoy it, if your family enjoys it, what does it matter how yours compares to somebody else on Instagram? It doesn't. Your self-worth is not defined by how your sourdough bread turns out whatsoever. And I struggled with this for a really long time because I feel like social media has pros and cons, but one of the cons is definitely the comparison trap. We're always comparing ourselves to other people and being harsh and judgmental on ourselves, when in reality, that's just not fair. Okay, I did 100 grams of discard. Something I wish I knew about that is that making sourdough, the joy is found in the process. This is like a therapeutic, ancient tradition that we're bringing in to kind of slow down the fast-paced culture that we live in. Everything is go, go, go. I feel like stress levels are higher than ever. This is like a moment to just breathe. I'm stirring, like it's just calming. This is part of it. It's not just cutting open the bread and saying, oh, how does my crumb compare to some Instagrammer? No, that's of course part of it, but so is this. So is the process of actually making the dough. And I think if you focus more on just the joy of doing these things and slowing down and enjoying the process of baking, you're gonna get more out of sourdough in general, and it's gonna be more fun, most importantly. And before you say like, oh, but my bread's turning out terrible, what does it matter about the process being enjoyable? Listen here, even a terrible, I should probably measure that. Even a terrible loaf of sourdough bread, terrible is terrible, but even a subpar loaf of sourdough bread that you made in your own home is 100 times better than anything you can get off the shelf at the grocery store. So be proud, like you did that. It might not be perfect in your eye, but I bet it tastes great. My family has never once complained to me and said, this loaf of bread is overproof. They don't know. All I know is that I just spent 2 days making a loaf of bread. It only takes like 20 minutes hands-on, but 2 days total to make a loaf of bread. And they love it. My kids love it. My husband loves it. No one's complaining. And on top of that, there is no perfect sourdough. It's all subjective. What you want in a loaf of bread is probably not the same as what the guy down the street wants in a loaf of bread. There was a defining moment for me in my sourdough journey when I attended a webinar hosted by Sour House, and they were interviewing Daniel Leader, who is a very popular sourdough cookbook maker, bakery owner, just a wealth of knowledge, honestly. And I did not expect for that webinar to be so transformative for me. During the webinar, something he talked about a lot was 1, finding joy in the process, which has really stuck with me, but 2, he has been making sourdough since like the 80s, and he went to France and he kind of followed and watched these different sourdough bakers, followed their processes, got to know what they did. And he said, if you were to show the open crumb style that is so popular and has kind of taken over the internet as like a trend. If you were to show that crumb to a French baker in the 80s, they would think you screwed up. They would think you added way too much water to that bread. Why are there so many holes? It's a style, it's a preference. Just because your bread doesn't have big holes in it, is that really what you want? Or is that just because you think that's what it should be? I would challenge you to think about what you actually want out of your loaf of bread instead of trying to achieve some ideal that doesn't actually exist. There is no perfect loaf. It's only perfect if it's what you want. And that was something that was hard for me. I was constantly thinking like, can someone look at my crumb? Is it good? Is it bad? What does it matter? Is it good or bad to me? Does my family enjoy it? Does it taste good? Now there is a certain element to, okay, I'm happy with this. Now how can I learn more? How can I make little tweaks to make it even better? But that shouldn't be the forefront of your mind. I just think worry less about how perfect your loaf looks, because perfect at the end of the day is completely subjective. Okay, lesson number 2 is starter health is everything. Maintaining your starter and keeping it healthy and strong and active is the most important part of sourdough baking. So there are lots of steps involved in making sourdough bread, many of which are optional. Some contribute more to the final result than others. You can skip almost all of the steps and do the bare minimum. But if your starter is vibrant and happy and healthy, you're probably still gonna come out with a pretty good loaf. However, the flip side is also true. You can throw every tip and technique and every additional little step into your sourdough routine, but if you're making a loaf of bread with a bad starter, an acidic starter, a weak starter, a starter that's too young, it hasn't been established enough yet, you're probably not gonna come out with a great loaf. So maintaining a good starter is key to everything. You can be pretty lazy with sourdough. I've made many videos about, oh, I only got in one stretch and fold before I fell asleep and things like this. You can skip lots of steps if your starter is strong and healthy. I made a video, my last YouTube video, no, 2 YouTube videos ago, about feeding ratios and how you can use those to make your starter healthier. I am such an advocate for learning about feeding ratios because once I learned it, it changed everything for me. I gained this deep understanding that I didn't have before, where everything suddenly became clear. Now I know why that happened. Now I know why my starter smells this way. Now I know why my bread looks like this way, why my dough feels this way. All of it came back to the health of my starter. And when you learn about feeding ratios and understand how to use those to your advantage, it is a massive, massive just enlightenment in your sourdough journey, I think. You can use feeding ratios to ensure your starter does not get acidic, which a ton of messages that I get are from people dealing with issues because their starter is acidic and they just didn't know it. So definitely tip number 2 is don't underestimate how important it is to have a happy, healthy starter when you're making bread. I do my very best to feed my starter at least once a day, sometimes twice a day. I keep it on the counter almost exclusively. I tend to fall back on a 1 to 5 to 5 feeding ratio, but I will adjust that just depending on what's happening. When do I need it? Am I planning to bake the next day? If I'm not planning to bake the next day, I'll do a higher ratio, like 1 to 10 to 10. It'll give me more time so that I don't have to feed it as soon. But just getting a little bit of education about that will make a huge difference for you. So, starter health is everything. Tip number 3, recipes are guides, not rule books when it comes to sourdough. This was something I feel like I had to rewire my brain about sourdough recipes in general when I first started making sourdough, because I came from a world where in cooking, or especially in baking, you can't wing it. You have to follow it exactly or it's not gonna come out good because there's science involved, right? Especially with baking, like cakes and different things like that. So I just kind of thought that's how sourdough was. Every ingredient needs to be measured exactly the same every time. What's the timeline? I just wanted it step by step by step, follow it to the T, I'll get great bread. Sourdough is not like that. And I didn't understand that for the longest time. And once that finally clicked for me, I was able to breathe and come at the process with such a more laid back attitude about it, which made it less stressful and more enjoyable. Okay, so the reason why sourdough recipes can't be followed to the T exactly every single time is because there are too many variables with sourdough. Number one, no one's starter is the same. There are so many different types of wild yeast and a ton of different types of lactic acid bacteria. Different starters from all around the world have been tested, and they've compared the exact species of the yeast and the bacteria, and they're different. Everyone has a different makeup in there. So how can my bread turn out exactly like yours if what's powering the entire thing is not the same? That's number one. Number two, there are a ton of other variables that have to do with your environment. The temperature in your house being a big one. Even the temperature of the water that you use to mix your dough together. The temperature of your starter. What's the humidity in your home like? What's your altitude? Like, I live at sea level. The way that I make sourdough is not going to be the same as somebody that lives in the mountains. It's all different. Sometimes the seasons can impact. I had a really, really bad streak of sourdough bread during hurricane season. And I thought, God, what is wrong with me? Like, I feel like I just figured it out, and now my dough is acting like I've never seen before. My bread's coming out weird. Like, what is wrong with me? I posted about it, and someone was like, it's hurricane season. There was a hurricane yesterday. And I'm like, yeah, so what? And they're like, research barometric pressure in the atmosphere and how that impacts baking. So I did that, and it's similar to altitudes. The pressure is different, and that can impact your baked goods. The season, winter to summer, spring to fall, there are too many variables. You can see how following a recipe exactly every single time is never gonna give you the same outcome because too much is happening, which can put a lot of people off. A lot of people say, okay, sourdough is too confusing, then I'm not gonna do it because there's just too many variables. However, I would argue that is part of the challenge that makes it so appealing to so many of us. Sourdough at the end of the day is simultaneously a science, an art, a little bit of math, and a lot of creativity. There's so much that goes to it, it's so complex. You don't have to get all into the weeds. You don't have to understand how everything works if you don't want to. It'll help you troubleshoot things, but you don't have to know all of it. But that said, you do kind of have to learn and gain a little bit of baker's intuition along the way so that you can make adjustments on the fly when variables change. As a simple example, let's say the temperature in my house is 75, 76 degrees. I know I'm gonna need to pay closer attention to my dough because the bulk fermentation is gonna be done sooner than if we were in the middle of a cold front and the temperature in my house is 67, 68. Maybe I'll do an overnight fermentation because it's gonna take so much longer. That's one variable, the temperature in my house. You can imagine all the other things, including the health of your own starter. Is your starter acting a little bit acidic? Maybe you'll put a little bit less in your dough so it has less of an impact. There are all kinds of little tweaks you can make along the way, which is why a lot of bakers keep a sourdough journal or logbook, and they write down what they did for their bake so that they remember what worked and what didn't. And honestly, your own trial and error is the best way to learn. I would use a recipe as a guideline, and don't be afraid to make adjustments on the fly. And if that seems intimidating at first, follow the recipe as written and troubleshoot based on the result. My bread looks like this. What do I need to tweak from that recipe for next time? That's the best way to learn. That's how I've learned, and that is how I continue to learn. Okay, lesson number 4, something I really wish I had known at the beginning because I have struggled with this for so long, still do. Do not fear the overproof. Don't be afraid to overproof your dough. Overproofed dough bakes up and tastes better and has a better texture than underproofed dough. I have a bit of anxiety and I have a lot of impatience. And so I will stare at my dough and check on it every 20 minutes. And I'm like, is it ready? Is it ready? Is it ready? And I'll shape it too soon. My gut is telling me, back off, let it go a little bit longer. But my mind is like, what if it overproofs? What if it overproofs? It's gonna taste great. The texture is gonna be nice and light and fluffy, no problem. And if it's so overproof that you can't even shape it, throw it in a pan and make focaccia. What's the big deal? It's not a big deal. Don't be afraid to overproof. The most common mistake that I see beginner bakers making, myself included, this was me, is underproofing their dough. 80% of the pictures I get from people of what's wrong with my bread, it's underproofed. Let it go longer. Don't be afraid to let your dough keep on going. As Tom from the Sourdough Journey once said, a life lived in fear of overproofing is a life half lived, and I could not agree more. Okay, and I kind of already touched on this a little bit, but tip number 5, experiment. Experiment, experiment, experiment. I know that's easy for me to say because I'm a blogger and that's part of what I post about is all these experiments, but my learning exponentially increased when I started doing side-by-side comparisons of things where only one variable was changed. I have an issue where I'll be like, oh, here's how this bread turned out. Let me change 5 things. No, change one thing so that any difference between your bakes, you know exactly what caused it. Experiments will teach you so much in such a short time. You can watch videos online, people like me, there's lots of other great accounts out there that post educational content. You can and you will learn from their videos, but you will learn so much more by seeing it and feeling it and experiencing it yourself. It's one thing to see it in a video, it's another thing to experience it in person. You get the texture, you get the sense, the smell. There's so much more that you get in person versus just visual. There's a lot. So don't be afraid to experiment. If you don't want to waste a ton of flour doing 2 full loaves, do mini loaves, do half loaves so that you can see what the difference is on a little bit more of a budget. I wrote down a few specific experiments that you can try. Bulk fermentation length. If your dough is at the same temperature, do 2 loaves, shape one when you normally would and let the other one go a little bit longer. You may discover, as I did when I did this experiment, that you have been underproofing your loaves and you could have been pushing them further the whole time. That was an eye-opening experiment for me personally. Another one, autolyse and fermentolyse. Autolyse is when you mix your flour and water together first, let it sit, and then after at least 30 minutes, usually about an hour, you can even go overnight, then you'll add your starter and salt. A fermentolyse is very similar, except you mix your water and flour and your starter together and you delay the salt. Try doing that and see what the difference is. Was it worth the extra time and effort that you put into it or not? Only you can say. Different flour combinations. Try different brands. Try different types of flour. Try different protein content. Try throwing in 10% of a different flour next time. If you normally do 500 grams of bread flour, do 400 grams of bread flour and 100 grams of whole wheat. Or even just 50. Maybe you're just throwing 50 grams of rye or something. Try different flour variations and see what you like. And lastly, hydration levels. If you normally bake at a 75% hydration level, try 70. See what the difference is. Does your flour like that better? Was it easier to handle? Or was 75 the way to go? Experiment. You will learn so much. It kind of goes hand in hand with following recipes and why I feel like I struggled so much at the very beginning. I was trying to follow someone else's experiment. I needed to do my own. So I encourage you, don't be afraid. You might have some funky loaves, but usually there's something you can do with a funky loaf. If it's underproofed, croutons. Overproofed, turn it into focaccia, or you can slice it up, brush it with olive oil, a little sprinkly of sea salt, bake it. Now you have a perfect base for bruschetta or like dipping for different dips. There's a lot of stuff you can do with failed loaves if it doesn't seem edible enough to be bread. Also, I've been mixing this for way longer than I normally do, but what harm can it possibly do? Oh, and one last experiment that I would encourage everyone to try is a time lapse of your starter. You can do a time lapse I'm not sure about Androids, but if you have an iPhone, it's just a setting. When you open your camera, you know, there's the photo, video, cinematic you might have depending on your iPhone version. If you keep scrolling, I believe the first one or the last one is time lapse. You can tap that and it will take a time lapse video of whatever you set it up in front of. So feed 2 different starters. Maybe you do different feeding ratios, or maybe you just feed your starter like normal, and being able to see the time lapse of it, you'll get a much clearer perspective on how long it takes to peak, how long it stays peak, and when it begins to fall. Word of caution, you might have to plug in your phone so it doesn't die, or you can use an iPad or something if you need your phone with you. But time-lapse videos will give you a ton of useful information about timing. Okay, so to recap, do not attach your self-worth to your sourdough crumb. Don't fall into that trap. Number 2, don't underestimate the health of your starter. Lesson number 3, recipes, see them as guides, not as rules that you have to follow. Sourdough is more of a process. Number 4, fear not the overproof. Don't be afraid to let your dough go longer than you think it should. You might be surprised at what you discover. And number 5, don't be afraid to experiment to accelerate your learning. It will teach you so much. I hope these little tips from my year and a few months of making sourdough help you just maybe have a little bit of a different perspective about what we're all doing here. Everyone always says, like, what's the draw of sourdough? Like, why are you so passionate about it? I have a history of being a hobbyist. I think it has some kind of relation to my ADHD, but I go from hobby to hobby to hobby and I jump. Some hobbies are expensive. I got into sewing for a little while, bought a sewing machine, did that for maybe 4 or 5 months, and then was just bored with it, done. Bob Ross painting, gardening, cross stitching. I mean, so many things. But sourdough, this is the longest hobby I've ever had outside of reading. I'm a lifelong reader. Sourdough is number 2. And I think the reason why is because it's always a challenge. It's always exciting. There's always something new to learn. And at the end of the day, you have something that brings so much joy to so many people. There's so many amazing things about sourdough. So I hope this video was encouraging to you. All of us are screwing up. Even the people that make great loaves, beautiful loaves on Instagram, they all screw up. We all have bad loaves. We're all learning along the way. I am in my infancy of my journey. I've only been doing this for a year, gosh darn it. What do I know? But everything that I learn and experiment, I'm sharing with you, and I hope that helps. And I love it when you do that in return. I love your emails and your messages, especially when you say you've tried something new. It just makes my heart sing. So thank you for that. If you have any questions about any of these tips, definitely let me know in the comments below. And I think this dough has a really great gluten development because I've been mixing it for a long time. Okay, happy baking, everybody.